Gremmy Thoumeaux, the Quincy marked with the letter V, the visionary. Childlike in appearance and personality, his looks do not accurately display the power Gremmy's capable of. As the self-described strongest Sternritter, Gremmy has the power to turn fantasy into reality, turning people's bones into cookies, summoning giant meteors, literally anything is possible. In the original canon, Gremmy fights Kenpachi Zaraki and actually forces the captain to release his Shikai before finally losing to the smoke demon. But with such a destructive shrift, how would Gremmy fare if he went up against any of the other captains in the Gotei 13? And as per usual, I've got Broken Ronin here.
Yo, what's up everybody? Ready to explain why Gremmy solos?
How do you feel about Gremmy? What are your overall thoughts and opinion on him before we really get started?
So I think in terms of a character, he is, just generally speaking, really cool. One of my favorite Quincy, especially out of like when they're introduced in the 1,000-Year Blood Work. And I think in terms of power and how that's going to relate to this video, a very strong guy. Like in general, he is in the upper echelon of Bleach characters, especially in this final arc.
Definitely. Unfortunately, it's not like he has much competition between his other Sternritter brethren. Gremmy is just an anomaly. He's such an amazing character, and you can tell Kubo really put a lot into him. So we know in the original series against Kenpachi, what chance did he really have going up against a monster like that that's just able to literally cut through space? So we're gonna completely skip him and we're gonna move into, let's say, if Gremmy met with Ukitake Jushiro. I don't know how you feel like this goes, but I feel like Sogyo no Kotowari isn't really gonna offer him much defense against imagination.
Yeah, definitely not. Unless bro can redirect some concepts, it's just not happening. He's just going to imagine his bones are made of cookies and he's just going to fold. Jushiro already does not have the physical stamina or just general ability needed to confront Gremmy in the way that Kenpachi was able to. And I think just when you combine the fact that Ukitake's main form of defense and attack would be negated by Gremmy not even really using projectiles.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. You know, it would be absolutely vile if Gremmy was like, oh, you're diseased. I just imagined you don't have one anymore. And Ukitake's like, whoa, and then he just kills him.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, you know what? I'll do you a favor. I'll do you a solid. You ever heard of outer space? Go up there real quick. I got something to show you.
Oh no, the vacuum of space. It is insane that Gremmy can just do that. Moving on, because obviously Ukitake stands no chance. He's gonna go up against Dogman Komamura Sajin with the giant Phantom Samurai. Like you said, Gremmy's just able to turn people's bones into cookies. He's literally able to open voids of space with a giant target like that. He could literally just open a black hole like inside the Phantom and it takes both of them in.
There's just so many different ways that Gremmy can take down an opponent, even if they're like temporarily immortal, and just removing them from the battlefield is one of the easiest ways. His initial strategy to getting rid of Kenpachi was just to seal him in a bunch of water and then bury him underneath a bunch of earth. Sure, Kenpachi was able to get out, but I don't know if Komamura is that strong, and even if he is, he ain't cutting through space the same way that Kenpachi was able to. There are just so many ways that Gremmy can deal with someone like Komamura, not to mention the fact that he could just outlast his immortality without even breaking a sweat, without even using his hands. Even at his best, even at his strongest, even when he's literally invincible, quote unquote, he just wouldn't be able to deal with the power of imagination that Gremmy has.
His Dangai Joe form, which literally just makes Komamura, I don't want to say immortal, but it makes him invulnerable, right? Gremmy can literally just be like, okay, well, I imagine that you're not invulnerable anymore. And poof,
yeah,
it's over. Moving on, we have Soy Fawn coming up as an opponent against Gremmy, which, if Soy Fawn's fast enough to throw in her 2 Shikai, but even then, Gremmy, even if he gets hit with it, is probably just strong enough to negate it.
Soy Fawn's really gonna make Gremmy sweat here. Just imagine she hits him with the first strike and he's like, no, that didn't hit me though. She's just caught in this never-ending loop of, yeah, no, but my imagination says it didn't happen. It's going to get a little bit repetitive, but Gremmy can do so many different things that Soy Fawn just can't. She's gonna bring out her Bankai, shoot a massive explosion. It's just gonna get blocked or redirected, or very interestingly enough, do you think he can imagine a way like Zanpakuto abilities if he was like in the right state of mind to? I know he didn't do it against the likes of Kenpachi, but
yeah, I think Kenpachi was just so unbelievably strong. It like you said, it was more of a psychological thing for Gremmy, because Gremmy should have been able to, for all intents and purposes, beat Kenpachi, but he had never seen someone that was just built like that before. before, to the point where Gremmy literally started doubting himself. And that's literally his one weakness, where if you can make Gremmy think he doesn't have a chance of winning, he literally won't. I don't think Soy Fawn is ever gonna bring or scare Gremmy to the point where that happens. Like you said, like he's just gonna look at that stab, because let's be clear, the cannon poses no threat against someone like Gremmy. Her Bankai. Shunko probably doesn't pose much of a threat. The main thing that she would probably have is jumping up to him really quickly and trying to hit him twice, and even then, I don't think that's gonna do much around him. I'm just picturing like she like pierces Gremmy with her little stinger, and then Gremmy literally just pulls out the blick and just pops her one in the head. Like up next, we've got Shinji Harako with his inverted world, and we know his Bankai doesn't hold much in a 1v1, so mostly just the inverted world. I mean, I think that would be interesting for Gremmy. He'd be like, whoa, weird, and then just set things back.
Yeah, just wow, what if my senses weren't reversed or inverted, right? Or, you know, what if yours were too? Or, you know, it's literally just the power of imagination, and Shinji's Bankai nor his Shikai are useful or powerful enough to deal with Gremmy in this situation. He can be inverted all he wants in the vacuum of space. He can just make duplicates if necessary.
Even if you want to go ahead and say that Gremmy does not have the power to control the inverted world or switch it back and forth, Gremmy goes, okay, well, invert this, and then summons just a gigantic meteor and just blows up the entire area. Like, we literally had a similar conversation about this in our other Gotei 13 gauntlet with Ichigo that you can check out on Ronin's channel. If you can just blow up the entire area or just destroy everything, regardless of inversion, Shinji's just screwed. It doesn't matter what way things are falling. If it hits the ground and blows up, that's a pretty good way to end. And I don't know if you've caught wind of this yet. The trend is very clear that Gremmy is really just an unstoppable force. We've gone through almost 4 captains and not a single person stood a single chance.
Yeah, Kenpachi was literally the perfect opponent to go up against him because he just opposed all of Gremmy's hacks.
Like, for example, if you were to double up and give Kensei Mugaruma and Rose Otorabashi a 2v1 against Gremmy, Gremmy's still coming out on top against 2 captains at the same time. Like Kensei with his Zanpakuto that can blow things up and release, you know, strings of wind that cut things, and Kinshara with Rose that genuinely his Bankai can create full-on illusions, are literally nothing compared to Gremmy, who I feel like we could literally say is comparable to like a god.
Yeah, it's just so crazy because you look at like Rose's abilities and he's just like, okay, I can't hear right now. I can't hear Bankai. That's unfortunate for you. Here's a bunch of water and I'm gonna bury you underground. Or here's a meteor. Like, it just gets really bad in terms of like how he deals against someone like Kensei who just uses like brute force. I mean, when Gremmy hardens his body, he can even stop the slashes of Kenpachi temporarily. So I feel like Kensei and his wind, or even his Bankai where he like gets up close and personal, is just not gonna have enough raw physical force to do damage to Gremmy if he decides he doesn't want it to.
Gremmy can also literally just create life with his imagination. Like, he's able to create clones of himself. He's literally able to create fake Sternritter that have entirely different powers of their own and their own movesets. Even if you want to say that Kensei and Rose are quote unquote able to put Gremmy in a corner, which I think it's very clear from what we've already talked about is just something that's not gonna happen. I'm just being super generous at this point. He could just create another one of himself that literally has the exact same power as him, that can literally just imagine any scenario that he wins. I feel like sometimes just overwhelming force of Gremmy can't even be stopped when we get into even stronger captains, when you consider people like Byakuya.
Yeah, Byakuya, he's a character who I think is very, very powerful by the end of the 1,000-Year Blood War. But even he doesn't really have an answer to somebody like Gremmy, and it's just because, like, what are petals really going to do anything that he can think of? It's just so easy for Gremmy to get around all of Byakuya's abilities, and I think that even though Byakuya is not like the rest of the characters we've talked about on the list so far, he's in a completely different level in terms of his strength, power, and just general fighting ability. It's not enough to defeat someone like Gremmy.
Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi is just not standing a single chance against someone that can literally just create millions of machine guns and probably shoot out as many bullets as Byakuya can create petals and match him every step of the way. Byakuya's Senkei massacre scene, or even if he uses like the white blade Shuke Hakuteiken, just stands no chance against the Visionary. Literally just a brain in a vat.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous just how strong Gremmy really is at this point.
So that being said, moving on to someone that I think we might have a little bit more of an interesting discussion about, Toshiro Hitsugaya. In the end of series is also someone who proves himself to be one of the strongest captains, especially when you consider he moves into adult form and kind of the hacks that he gains in that level. How do you feel that Toshiro would be able to deal in a fight against the Visionary?
In terms of like raw power, ability versus ability, Gremmy has Toshiro beat. And the reason is just because I think Gremmy's ability can be very preemptive. However, when you start to account for Gremmy's character and Toshiro's character and how they use their abilities, you can definitely formulate a way for Toshiro to win, which is the 3 seconds, 4 paces, just AoE ice-based attack, right? And if Gremmy gets hit with that without intentionally making himself immune to ice, Toshiro just wins because his ice freezes Gremmy and it also freezes his ability, which is something that he has in his adult form. I do want to like add a sort of caveat to that statement is that if Gremmy so likes, he can just pull a Gerard and say, before he ever even gets hit with an ice blast, I am immune to ice. No ice-based ability can harm or affect me. That would keep him resistance to the likes of even adult Toshiro's ice-based abilities. It just depends on how you think they interact. But if he doesn't, if he acts arrogantly, which is something I think we've seen him do in the series against Kenpachi initially, I think that Toshiro could probably just freeze him, because not only is that something Toshiro tends to do in character, but especially in his adult form where he knows that he doesn't have much time, we've seen that when Toshiro's like that, he just goes for the instant KO.
Gremmy, like you said, does like to play with his food. As we see with Kenpachi, he wants to toy with Kenpachi. Kenpachi thinks he's so strong that Gremmy wants to prove that he's stronger, which ultimately ends up being his end. If Toshiro's able to realize that, wow, this guy could literally take me out any second, I need to take this as serious as possible and end this as quickly as possible. That's really the only time I can see Toshiro getting a win. I'd say it's kind of like an 8 out of 10 kind of thing, maybe a 9 out of 10 kind of thing, where Gremmy wins most of the time.
Surprisingly enough, Toshiro is the first person that even has like a chance. Even winning 10% of the time seems to be a small victory for the Gotei 13 at this point.
We're gonna put Gremmy up against Shunsui now. How do you feel like Shunsui can deal with Gremmy? Because honestly, he may not do as well as Toshiro did.
I don't think he would, actually. I don't think his abilities are paired very well against someone like Gremmy, because his hacks are very decent and he's a very like intelligent, fairly strong character, right? Obviously in the grand scheme of Bleach, he's extremely powerful, but relative to someone like Gremmy, I feel like his Child's Games and even eventually his Bankai just don't hold a candle to what Gremmy can do. And I think that Shunsui's sort of style of fighting, or even just the way he goes about things, would lead Gremmy to get bored or just disinterested very quickly. And a disinterested Gremmy is a Gremmy that is probably just going to try to obliterate you with sheer force.
It kind of does come down to just an awful mismatch for Kyoraku at the end of the day when it comes to Gremmy, because you're completely correct in that Gremmy can really just ignore everything that Shunsui can do. He can ignore his Shikai, his Child's Games. Like you said, he really only has to play along with them if he really wants to. At this point, in any fight with Gremmy, Gremmy is pretty much the controller of the realm of the fight. Like, he has full home field advantage and he has full control basically over reality. So someone like Kyoraku, whose abilities don't control reality, they sort of bend it. Someone like Gremmy has complete superiority over them because, again, Gremmy can literally just do whatever he wants. The Child's Games really aren't going to control Gremmy or make Gremmy have to listen, and Shunsui's Bankai is really going to have next to no effect against someone like Gremmy, who can literally just, again, act like it's not even happening. He can make his body non-susceptible to disease, and at the end of the day, once he gets bored, Gremmy is just going to take Shunsui out. With the awful mismatch and the way that Shunsui fights, his whole thing is dragging things out. He does it with Stark, he does it with Lil Baro, where he basically just brings a character to their lowest point and drags their stamina down until he can get the win. He literally stabs Stark in the back. The Captain Commander would actually fall. Lil Baro, an actual god, couldn't beat Shunsui, but Gremmy most likely could.
Gremmy probably would have an easier time than Lil Baro did.
Harako just doesn't have the physical and actual combat stats to go up against Gremmy. Moving on, I actually have something interesting because I'm curious to what you think. Unohana Retsu versus Gremmy.
This would be a version of like going up against a Kenpachi that Gremmy can win against, personally. And the reason is just because when you look at how Kenpachi and Unohana's fight breaks down, Kenpachi just beat her with his unreleased sword. Without using Nozarashi, without using Bankai, Kenpachi was able to evolve back to his typical full power base form, if you want to call it that. We do see that Kenpachi would not really be able to deal with the likes of Gremmy's full power without the help of his Shikai. So if base Kenpachi is stronger than Unohana and Gremmy is stronger than base Kenpachi, I think it just leads us to a pretty simple conclusion that while Unohana may be able to put up a decent fight in a similar fashion to Kenpachi, I think as soon as things like meteors get brought out or just the vacuum of outer space, she probably loses that fight and gets dealt with rather handily.
She probably is in the same camp of character where she would probably be able to scare Gremmy. She just doesn't have the overall physical stats to do the same things that Kenpachi did. Like, if the meteor came out, she probably wouldn't be able to slash it.
Yeah, that's basically it. I think she has the sort of, maybe if you say she's even relative to base Kenpachi, she gets Gremmy excited. He's really ready to test his abilities. But as soon as something like the meteor is pulled out, I just don't think she has the feats to support the idea that she can just cleave it in half or even survive the impact.
Do you think Unohana's healing capabilities and her regenerative powers, or even like her Bankai, make any difference at all against Gremmy?
Possibly, I could see something like that happening, but we do see that her sort of healing abilities can be overwhelmed just by a sheer amount of continuous damage. And I think that Gremmy, if he sees that, okay, yeah, you're pretty resilient, you keep healing yourself, you keep coming back from things that rightfully should be killing you, all right, let me just make 20 of myself real quick, and now we'll all attack you. And I think that would just basically overwhelm Unohana's ability to heal. So maybe she would survive the meteor. I just think that over time, she's going to get worn down significantly quicker than Gremmy. And like we acknowledge, worst comes to worst, he throws her into space, never to be seen again.
You heard it here first. Gremmy's the new Kenpachi. Next up, we do have two more contenders. Viewers are probably going to think it's weird that I ordered it like this, but trust me, it makes sense. How do we feel like Gremmy would be able to handle another overwhelming force like Kenpachi, him of all hims, Genryusai Yamamoto?
I think that in terms of like raw ability and power, Yuha kind of implies there is no other Quincy that he has in his forces that at least at their current state, they would be able to control or be powerful enough to hold his Bankai, right? So when Yuha says that I am the only one that could have stolen this Bankai, what I take that to mean every Quincy in his forces simply did not possess the amount of Ryatsu or just were not a capable vessel for the power that Yamamoto has. And I think that would include Gremmy. That being said, Yamamoto probably is just a Kenpachi to Gremmy in the sense that he's overwhelmingly powerful with the added ability of having fire that can incinerate basically anything that Gremmy decides to imagine. I think maybe the only thing that could beat him is once again just the broken ability of being able to throw someone in outer space, but it might not be too crazy to think that even if Gremmy brings down the meteor, Yamamoto just slices up and it's just incinerated into ashes.
This is shown in anime. If you want to tell me that Yamamoto's fire isn't going to be able to like do anything to voids of space, I will literally bet money on that. Yamamoto, very similar to Kenpachi, where with just his level of experience, the way he holds himself, and just his overall just dominating force, like he's going to look at this little kid who, granted, is very strong. Yamamoto's gonna be like, I'm gonna literally beat the brakes off of you, and I'm gonna explain and I'm gonna take you through every lesson of why you need to learn some respect. All 7 letters of RESPECT. His Bankai is compared to what, 11 million degrees or something.
It's just as hot as the sun.
Like
yeah,
that.
It's just ridiculous.
So if it's as hot as the sun, I think he's gonna be able to incinerate a meteor. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if Gremmy has the mental willpower to to endure a fight with Yamamoto, Gremmy can overall override reality and beat Yamamoto. But it's a very similar situation to Kenpachi, where Yamamoto has just that insane aura about him. He'll be able to literally scare the shit out of Gremmy and make him think he's gonna lose.
When you look at a power matchup of the fire manipulation that Yamamoto has versus like Gremmy's imagination, even when you take into account their respective levels of strength and Reiatsu, when he's confronted by Kenpachi, very injured by the way, after like escaping from the meteor, getting blown up, all of those things, right? He sort of psychs himself out and doesn't think as clearly as he possibly could. And I think a very similar thing would apply to Yamamoto. Sure, he could maybe technically beat him, and I still want to leave the option out there for some people who are maybe skeptical about like Yamamoto surviving. Maybe 1 or 2 times out of 10, you know, the fire just ain't firing and he ain't slashing through space like that, maybe. But I think more times than not, Yamamoto is just destroying basically everything that Kenpachi did and scaring Gremmy into destroying himself, very similar to how he did in the manga.
We hit the nail on the head pretty strong here. This is the first person who, similar to Kenpachi, is actually able to turn the tables. Moving forward to the last person in the Gotei 13, at least in the era of the 1,000-Year Blood War that we're focusing on. One person that I left for last, not because I'm biased and he's my favorite captain. I just feel like Mayuri Kurotsuchi is just such a devious little fuck. Like, he would literally be able to find a way to meet Gremmy at every turn. And it would be a very different fight, whereas Yamamoto and Kenpachi wear Gremmy's confidence down to the point where he feels like he can't win. Mayuri would just be able to be like, all right, you have a meteor, here's some other crazy fucking thing that's going to be able to match your meteor. Like, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like this would be such a crazy battle of the minds.
I actually think in terms of adaptability, Mayuri's just better than Gremmy. He's smarter, he has more feats in terms of like growing and changing relative to opponents that are just generally stronger than him. And even though Gremmy has an ability better suited to like just changing with the flow, like going with it and just adapting to whatever situation he's put into, I think Mayuri's disposition as a scientist allows him to sort of deal with a lot of the things that Gremmy could throw at him. I mean, I'm pretty sure we see that he can just, if he's really in danger, Mayuri can just turn into some liquid that can't be attacked or anything like that. He obviously has his Bankai baby, which just adapts and like figures out a counter to basically everything. We see that he has like dozens and dozens of like toxins and nerve paralyzing agents and all these kinds of things that could probably just mess Gremmy's mind up if they ever made contact with him. Like, I can imagine him just turning Gremmy into a vegetable. He's like, all right, cool. If your ability is imagination, you just can't imagine anything. You just can't think. You can't speak. Your brain is not working well enough for you to even activate your ability. Not only is Mayuri twisted enough to do it, but he actually has like the hacks and just general abilities to do so. I think where he falls short, in spite of Gremmy, I think being the less adaptable fighter, in spite of him being dumber, in spite of him being like sort of foolish and childish when it comes to battle, I do think that there are certain scenarios or certain circumstances that Mayuri just might not be able to deal with. Like we see versus someone that also adapts very quickly, like Pernida. Mayuri was forced into a corner numerous times, and in the end, it was Nemu who actually was able to get him out of dodge there. I think that kind of speaks to, while Mayuri is very adaptable, while he's able to change, while he's able to go with the flow, if you're able to catch him off guard too quickly, too frequently, I think you are able to get him. And Gremmy does have the necessary hacks to do so. So it's one of those where I think it's kind of between Toshiro and Yamamoto in terms of how many times I think he wins. Like, I think it's like almost a pretty 50-50 split, but Gremmy is also not getting overwhelmed, at least in my opinion, to the point where like he just can't get a victory.
I would honestly consider Gremmy a much more powerful Sternritter than Pernida. Gremmy definitely has what it takes to stop Mayuri. When he literally has machine guns, he has the voids of space. We've talked up and down about all the different things that Gremmy can do. It's definitely not up for contention whether Gremmy can get that win or not.
Yeah.
So it really just comes down to the fact that Gremmy is able to almost completely obliterate the Gotei 13, which is kind of weird why Yuhaba didn't bring him the first time. Toshiro, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 times. Yamamoto, we think, wins. And then Mayuri probably sits right in between those two with like a 50-50 chance.
So more times than not, Gremmy is just stomping out the captains.
Absolutely disgraceful. But I think it kind of does really make sense because based on community scaling and just how everyone feels, the 1,000-Year Blood War may have been been probably the weakest Gotei 13 literally ever. And I think people like Gremmy kind of really show that. Guys, thank you all so much for tuning into this. I appreciate you if you made it all the way to the end. Make sure you go subscribe to Broken Ronin's channel if you haven't already. We did an awesome Ichigo versus Gotei 13 video very similar to this. If you haven't seen it already, go check it out. You all have a great rest of the day. Peace.